So in Russia, they now have done research with pyramids that holds the key to explaining all this stuff in a way that we can make sense out of. What you're seeing here on the bottom is people, and this is a 144-foot tall pyramid built out of fiberglass and PVC pipe. PVC pipe on the inside, as you can see here, and then these are the sheets of fiberglass on an angle going up the inside. An amazing, amazing structure that has many, many interesting things that happen once you've built it, both inside and outside. This is not simply something that you get to look at and say, wow, it's a pyramid, it's cool. This is a working technology that they have studied scientifically. And by the way, this is not woo-woo science. These are the same people that were in the military-industrial complex of the Soviet Union who, after the fall of the Iron Curtain in 1990-91 timeframe, still had the facilities, still had the communist government paying them a monthly salary, but didn't have anything to do because the military-industrial complex no longer existed as it once did. So they still have the labs, they still have a salary, and they can study whatever the heck they want. So because they had this whole background of research, they built pyramids. And they studied the science of pyramids, and they came up with some amazing research. So here are some smaller examples. You can see they were built in the countryside. This one obviously is a lot shorter. Now let's take a look at some of the things that they found. If you build one of these pyramids over an oil well, you get 25% more productivity out of the oil well. It's amazing. And you get 25% fewer contaminants in the oil. They found incredible healing results. First of all, if you take a poisonous substance and you store it inside the pyramid, the chemical makeup of the substance changes, and it's no longer toxic to the body. The pyramid is harnessing the very energy of life, the energy that keeps things alive and keeps things healthy. They even found that cancer, you could give the same carcinogens to lab rats and then to rats in the pyramid, and the rats in the pyramid would get much, much fewer tumors, if any, than the rats in the lab. You give them exactly the same carcinogen, and the rats in the pyramid do fine. The same thing was true with typhoid fever, diabetes, all this kinds of stuff. In the pyramid, there was no problem. There was a 400% increase in the productivity of seeds that were stored in the pyramid. That's another amazing effect. All you got to do is take seeds and scatter them into the pyramid, and then leave them there for a while, and then start planting them. And the plants are 400% bigger than the same seeds that were not put in the pyramid, over and over again. So it's like that whole, the seed itself and the plant that grows from it has been supercharged by this energy in a very fascinating way. There was strong electrical activity generated at the top of the pyramid, meaning that you could actually put a battery pile, like a battery charger up there, which is just positive, negative in a big solution, and it starts generating electrical current, and you can power your house with it. Now this is where it gets really interesting, because what they also found was that earthquakes did not happen anymore as these big, nasty, catastrophic events. They only got small little quakes that didn't cause any trouble to the land. Now, if the ancients are building pyramids all over the world, and we know that Atlantis sank, then do you think that maybe they were trying to make sure that that didn't happen again? Or, an even more interesting idea is, what if the ancients knew that Atlantis was going to sink, and they were in a mad dash to try to stop it from happening by building pyramids around the world, and they didn't get the network finished in time? That's another possibility. We don't really know which one it is. There was also an enormous column of energy detectable around the pyramid in the atmosphere, hundreds of miles wide. And this column of energy would actually deflect severe weather. You would have a storm coming in, and there's this big circle that forms around the pyramid, this energetic circle. And the storm just goes right around the circle. It's incredible. So what does this start telling us about the nature of weather? Think about that for a minute. What is weather? What is a severe weather activity? It's a torsion field, right? It's a consciousness thing. Earthquakes. Earthquakes, to some degree, are related to this torsion field because if you have this pyramid which is regularizing that flow of energy, then you no longer get earthquakes anymore. The ancient teachings tell us that the earth is alive and that bad weather and bad problems are the result of the earth being upset with us, that we create a disharmony. And the disharmony that we create is what creates the bad weather and the bad earthquakes and the volcanoes and all that stuff. And the pyramids were able to make all this stuff happen. The Russians took granite that looked like salt and pepper. It was white and black granite. And they put the granite inside the pyramid. And then after a while, they took the granite out and they built jail cells with it. And what they found was that the prisoners who stayed in the jail cells made out of this specific granite were much more well-behaved than the other prisoners. The prisons that were built, where the cells were built with this granite, those prisoners in those prisons they all got off of alcohol and drugs. They all started to get along with each other much more than the others. And the problem is that the translation was bad, and we thought that it was actually salt and pepper that they were feeding the prisoners. But it turns out that salt and pepper is actually granite. So that's a mistake. So this proves that there is a connection between the consciousness of humanity and the consciousness of the earth. Earth changes are not something that's happening randomly. We're also, oh my God, global warming, what are we going to do? Oh, we got to use solar power and stop driving cars and stuff. Well, obviously we should figure out how to get cars running on water, and I was talking to you about that technology. That already exists. We could desalinate the oceans very easily with some of these technologies. But global warming is an energetic phenomenon. And it's a phenomenon that, as I said, is occurring throughout the solar system. It proves there's a connection between earthquakes and consciousness. It proves that there's a connection between severe weather and consciousness. And it proves that our consciousness is directly affecting the earth. So that's a very significant piece of information for us to have because it gives us the power back. We're no longer out there expecting that these things cannot be dealt with, that there's really nothing we can do. We do have the control. We do have the power. And it comes from pursuing the truth within ourselves. And then that truth has a radiant quality that affects the whole planet. So all we have to do is work on ourselves, work on our own inner spiritual quest, find the love within ourselves, find the ability to love ourselves, which is primarily through forgiveness. If you have forgiveness, then you can deal with all of these terrible things in your life that you haven't been willing to accept. With forgiveness comes the stoppage of the wheel of karma. You don't have to keep going through cycle after cycle of suffering anymore, because now what you're doing is breaking the cycle. And so on a collective level, all these earth changes over here are happening because we haven't gotten to this forgiveness over here. And when we master this, then these synthesize together, and we won't have earth changes anymore. The pyramid was the master design in which the open sarcophagus in the king's chamber, you're supposed to lie in it. You have an out-of-body experience where you then face your own shadow self, projected to you as this monster that you have to wrestle with in the astral plane. And if you successfully can forgive and accept that part of yourself that appears to be evil, then you get the healing. Now, this is what's happening to us as a planet. What do you think that projection of the part of ourselves that looks evil is in the planet right now? The New World Order, the Illuminati, the government. If you are angry at the New World Order, if you are angry at the Illuminati, if you hate them, and if you're out there afraid of them, they're winning. Because negative entities feed on your fear. They actually harness your energy of fear. The fear that you feel sends energy to them. What I'm here to tell you is that there is nothing to be afraid of because they are fulfilling their purpose of acting as the projection of our shadow. We're going through this planetary initiation of the open sarcophagus. The reason why it's open is that once we're through this, there is no more death. We have reached a state of immortality, much different than where we are now. That's what the prophecies say. When someone who is profane, if you will, using a Masonic term, goes into the pyramid, like Napoleon, he had a terrible night. He tried to stay in the sarcophagus overnight. He had horrible nightmares, and he ran screaming out of the pyramid. So you have to be ready for this. That's his actual sketch of his terrible night in the pyramid that he drew. Isaac Newton, of course, was just another guy, a scientist, and he happened to see an apple fall, and everybody saw apples falling out of trees all the time. The only difference is that Newton starts saying, hey, why did the apple fall out of the tree? Is there something that made the apple fall out of the tree? It's gravity. There's a force that pulled the apple out of the tree and made it hit the ground. It doesn't just happen. There's a reason for why it happens. So this is the new Newtonian revolution. And the question is, are we looking to see the apple falling? Are we looking at the obvious truth of pyramids, Stonehenge, standing stones, temples, churches, megalithic structures built all around the world, 4,000 of them, and every single one is built on this grid? That's the same thing as Newton seeing the apple fall. That's the same thing. The only difference is that we haven't yet identified that there's a force responsible for why they built these things in these places.